Greetings brothers, welcome, I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander. Thanks for tuning into the weekly tactics video. Today we're looking at the Eradicators in 9th edition. They're fairly strong, we all know that, but how do they actually perform when you break all the numbers down and just compare every point of damage that they can do? Well, that's what this video is all about. If you want weekly updates on Blood Angels units, tactics, strategies, and also some live streams, then please consider subscribing. Alright, so we really will find out if Primaris Eradicators are the best heavy support today. So quick overview of what we're going to be running through, and let's get straight into it. So, Eradicators have various options. So the squad can be 3 to 6 Eradicators, base for 40 points per model. Their standard loadout is the Melt Rifles, which is an Assault 1, Strength 8, minus 4, 6 damage. If we do not advance, we can shoot twice at the same target using their total obliteration rule, and that gives them also plus 2 damage at half range. For additional 5 points for each model, we can take the Heavy Melt Rifle, which gives us 2 additional damage on both ranges, so it's d6 plus 2 at full range and d6 plus 4 at half range, which is a lot of damage. And then they go up to 45 points per model, and for every 3 models in the squad we can actually replace one of their melter rifles with a multi-melta. So quite a flexible squad, and I guess if you were going to replace one with the multi-melta and make them heavy, it might make sense just to take heavy melter rifles on all of them. Otherwise, obviously, they can be a bit more mobile and they can move and shoot. But I think careful positioning and using the heavy option is a really strong choice for these guys. So, what we've done then is we've looked at a few different options. So the Eradicators with the Meltas, the Eradicators with the Heavy Meltas, one Eradicator here with a multi-melta just to put his damage into perspective, and then if we replaced a regular melta squad with one multi-melta and then a heavy melta squad with one multi-melta. I've worked out the number of wounds against everything and then the number of damage against everything. And I guess this squad at the bottom is the notable one, where you're talking like it's an additional 5 points for each heavy melta and an additional 10 points for the multi-melta, so for 140 points. You have a unit that can do 20 damage against tier 4, 16 damage, this should actually say toughness 7, sorry, and 12 damage against toughness 8. So really quite a strong squad for 140 points. Basically the two guys would be heavy 4 and the multi-melta is heavy 4. Bear in mind all these calculations are done on the assumption that you shoot everything at the same squad. You would have to half these numbers if you decided to split your fire. I feel like you could probably just run 3-man squads and always pick the same target though, so you shouldn't have to necessarily split fire. Maybe you can do that at the end of the game if you really need to. And then from that damage potential we just looked at, I worked out like the cost of the points, as we mentioned, and worked out how many points the squad needs, or how many points of the squad it takes to do damage. So for your 20 damage here at 145 points, you're basically saying to do 1 damage to tier 4, you're spending 7.25 points. And if you look at these numbers, they're really not that high at all. You know, like 12 points of damage, or sorry, 12 points on the table to do a point of damage against tier 8 is significant. I would say that's, oh sugar, sorry. I would say that's fairly cheap. So I think Eradicators overall are fairly competitive, but yeah, the heavy melter rifles are like really competitive. Points per damage. I mean, I guess you have the small negative to move and shoot if you're taking the multi-melta. Yeah, I mean, I just think the multi-melta makes more sense to take with the heavy melter rifles. Maybe you want one squad that's a bit more mobile and moving, and then one squad that's a bit more static and pumping out a bit more damage. And again, I mean, it really 260 points or something if you have a regular squad, and then like this squad, sorry, 265. And I just think that's so agile, and also it's just so much damage threat. And bear in mind, these guys are core, so they are super easy to get rerolls on. And you could get other things to buff them, like a chaplain to buff their chance to hit and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of shots. I keep right clicking, sorry. Okay, so then we move on to like a final session of Mathhammer, where we take all the numbers we did for the 3 different squads and we hit them up against the sort of normal things that I look at every week. So infantry with armor 3+, character with a 3+, 4+, infantry B with like a 3+ and then a 5+ feel no pain, some sort of monster with a 2+, 4+ invulnerable save, and then some sort of armor. And yeah, so these are the damage numbers that each squad would do against these targets. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a very solid amount of damage for a unit that only costs 120 points here, I guess. And as we slowly move up for 135 points, again, a great amount of damage. Being able to do 10 wounds in a single turn against a character with a 4+ save is probably going to kill that character. You know, 100 point unit deleting just about any character. And then as you move even further up to the heavies with the multi-meltas, you know, you're basically saying you can almost take half the wounds of a monster or half the wounds of a huge tank. That probably cost 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 times the cost of these guys. So I know we don't have multi-part kits yet for the Eradicators with multi-meltas, but I think I would recommend probably running them with the heavy melt rifles. Blood Angels have enough mobile threat in their army where these guys could be quite static. Try and get them up on a building with a good arc of fire across the board. And yeah, I generally really like them. And then for just breaking this down a little bit more, obviously if you're shooting at like toughness 4 infantry, or these other infantry with these guns, then you're going to be overkilling. So somebody asked last week if I could include models killed, so I think I have down here. So if you were going to overkill infantry with these guys, I mean there may be a point where they can't see anyone and you just have to shoot at the infantry, then you will just kill a few infantry models here. So 3 or 4 infantry killed, I guess, because you're wasting a lot of damage. Because each shot obviously does an average of about 4 damage. Alright, so let's have a look at their survivability next. So we know that they're a toughness 5, we know they're in 3+ armor, they're 3 wounds per model, so a single model survives 18 bolt rifle shots, 5 flamestorm cannons, 3 power fists, and 1.5 plasma shots. So generally not the strongest, I'd say, but they're not bad either. So like a 3-man squad can take a bit of fire, and then also we did the 5-man squad because 5-man 200-point squad seems like it would be good to balance against some other units, which we'll come to in a few minutes. And then I guess the one thing to say is there is 2 stratagems, maybe even 3 here, sorry, two defensive ones and one that we can also use as well. So unyielding in the face of the foe for 1 CP this phase, against any 1 damage attacks the Eradicators would take, you get +1 to their armor save. So I mean that would make them more survivable against I guess everything here, because they would actually get a save on a 6 against the plasmas, where currently they're getting no save. We also have the ability to transhuman them. I think the reason I said 5 as well was because if we have 5, that keeps transhuman at 1 CP, so basically they would only be wounded on unmodified rolls of 4+. So I think that is generally very strong, so we could make these guys really strong. And then we also have an ability called Steady Advance, so if we did run like 5 with the heavy melter rifles and we needed them to move, we can actually pay 2 CP and still shoot them as though they didn't move. So combined with some sort of like Chapter Master rerolls or Rites of Battle or something like that, you'd be able to score a lot of hits on these guys. I haven't, in my damage calculations here, I've never included the ability to reroll anything or get any pluses to hit. So if you did that, they would only be stronger. But yeah, I mean, the thing about the survivability, I think, is the guys in Gravis armor generally are quite survivable. You can put them in cover, again, to get a 2+ save. So if you did put them in cover, and then you paid unyielding in the face of the foe, they have that 1+ save. So I guess 1 damage weapons, you know, they'd be super survivable. Okay, so then, yeah, so we've, at this point, I've started to jump onto some other units to work out their survivability. And other units are, I guess these 2 are elites, but I mean, I guess they're kind of fire support, I guess, for for us as Blood Angels, and the Redemptor being core right now, I think a Redemptor could combo up really well with the Eradicators, because the Redemptor could use the Wisdom of the Ancient to give the 6-inch reroll 1s bubble, and we use that bubble with our Eradicators and just advance maybe slowly or surely across the battlefield. The Redemptor provides obviously fire support, and the Redemptor sort of scares off any close combat unit that might want to get in with and tie up our Eradicators in combat. So I've included a Redemptor, and you can see I've worked out the survivability for that. I've included the Leviathan, because last time we looked at heavy support, Leviathan was heavy support until the last Forge World update. Now he's an elite, but I mean, he still fills that heavy support role or he fills a heavy fire support role for us. And the Leviathan is still arguably one of the toughest characters. This should actually be a 2+ save. I'm pretty sure I've worked this out on a 2+ save. I think it's just a typo. And the Repulsor, someone was asking about the Repulsor Executioner, so we've put the Repulsor in here as well. And I think the thing to note is the same as the other Primaris tanks, and to an extent the Redemptor, these guys really suffer from having no invulnerable save. I mean, the Redemptor gets away with it because he's got his Duty Eternal, but like the Repulsor at 355 points, you can see here he's almost half as good against the Flamestorm. Remember, this guy's like 185, so it's almost he's almost half the points, the Redemptor. He must be like 52% of the points. He's weaker against Power Fist, they're weaker against the Plasma. So if you're going to run the Repulsors, you have to either position them really well, or maybe you have a Tet Marine, or maybe you have a Psychic Fortress, something to give them an invulnerable save, because against the higher hitting weapons, they can be deleted fairly easily. So then I worked out, like, imagine a bolt rifle shoots a Redemptor, right? A single bolt rifle. So we know that 58 bolt rifles are take to kill a Redemptor. So basically did the points of the Redemptor divided by the bolt rifle. Sorry, 78 points here. And that is 2.3. So all these calculations are based on hit. Like, we're not including the attacker's ballistic skill at all. We're just assuming they hit. So imagine every time you get hit by a bolt rifle, you lose 2.3 points, right? Like, it's a percentage of this. Every time you get hit by a Flamestorm, you lose 3. Power Fist, you lose basically 8. And the Plasmas, you lose 17. So we worked out that for the Redemptor, we worked out for the Leviathan, and then we worked out for the Repulsor. So, like, every time you hit the Repulsor with a Plasma, essentially you lose 40 points. I mean, this is just average to give you an overall feel of, like, how valuable those points are to you in the battlefield. Now, over here, we included the Eradicators, and I've said green is the best, orange is second, and then blue is third. So you can see straight away here, the Eradicators actually, they're as good as a Redemptor against the bolt rifles, and then they come in second against the Flamestorm and the Power Fist. They are a bit weaker against the Plasmas, but we did mention there is a way to get a save against the Plasmas if we put ourselves in cover. I guess the vehicles obviously don't get cover, and then we do get the ability to transhuman. So I guess if you were transhumaned against a Plasma, rather than it wounding on 3s, it would wound on 4s. So it would probably make you about 18% more survivable against that. So yeah, we knew the Leviathan is one of the strongest things in terms of survivability. I mean, there's the Duty Eternal combined with the 2+5+ save just pushes them over the edge. We also included Hellblasters, and we also included Centurions, because Blood Angels get access to Centurions now. And Centurions actually survived a little bit more than I thought they would. You know, 2+ save and 4 wounds per model. They are quite expensive still, and they aren't core. But, I mean, they do get a save against the Plasma, so that sort of brings them almost on par with, like, the Redemptor, and they are very good against 1 damage weapons with their 2+ save. They're okay in the middle, but, you know, for being one of the cheapest units here, I mean, I think the Eradicators perform particularly well, and the fact that there's 2 stratagems that we can play to make them better is really important. I mean, there is one stratagem we can play in the vehicles, in that all these vehicles can smoke screen to make them -1 to hit, but arguably against, like, any sort of, like, I guess big strength weapons like strength 9 or strength 10, then your Eradicators transhuman is very valuable, especially if you keep them at that 5-man squad for 1 CP. Alright, so moving on, we'll have a look at damage. So this one's actually split across 2 slides. What we did was we grabbed all those things. So Leviathan Dreadnought, we worked out all weapon options. So like the Cyclonic Melt Lances, 2 of them, and the Cavaliers, the Storm Cannons, the Gravflux. We took a Redemptor. We took the Executioner with Macroplasma, and we took the Executioner with a Heavy Laser Destroyer. These were things that people wanted to see compared. And on the next slide, we also took the 6 Hellblasters, we took the 3 Centurions, and then we took our 2-man squad of Eradicators plus 1 Multi-Melta. And after I'd worked all this out, I actually went back and put in my super heavy tank as well that I've been running a little bit, because I was really surprised about how good the Eradicators were, and like I wanted to see how my super heavy compared to it. Answer is it didn't. The super heavy, I guess it really doesn't compare to it. And then if you actually compare Eradicator's survivability against the super heavy as well, the super heavy does a little bit better in the middle, but it's worse against the plasmas. Again, just the lack of a good save against those plasmas. And then, I mean, it does great against bolt rifles, but that's just because its toughness is 2x the bolt rifles, you know, strength 4v, toughness 8. So when we worked down this, again, then we worked out the points that each unit does, or how much damage for each point, basically. And it turns out that Centurions are actually the best against tier 4, I guess, because they have those Hurricane Bolters. But look at the Eradicators, and in terms of raw points of damage, they are right behind them. When we look at toughness 7, Eradicators are better than Centurions. This was the default Centurion loadout, so Grav Cannon and Hurricane Bolter. They're actually better than the Leviathan Dreadnought with its 2 times Gravflux, and that was shooting it on the... I was assuming that we were getting the 3 damage from the high power profile there. So it's stronger than the Leviathan Dreadnought. Quite a bit stronger, was it? So it's like 11.65 points to do a damage, whereas these are like 14 points. So I mean, it's like 20 or 30% stronger against the toughness 7, which I wouldn't have expected. And then against the toughness 8, it's 15 points to do a damage. I guess the Centurions actually come in. You know, the Centurions perform better than I thought. I mean, their one disadvantage is that they aren't core, but I guess armed correctly, Centurions might be okay. And then on the final toughness 8, 15 points against the Leviathan with the Cyclone Melta coming in second. I guess that's because it's got that strength 9. It's basically a las cannon, the Cyclonic Melta Lance, I believe. And then the Gravflux came in third. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the repulsor, it doesn't perform for the points at all in shooting. And then when we talked about how much it actually costs to how weak it was in survivability as well, like it's just not there. I mean, I think when they changed the repulsor from being able to shoot its main cannon twice to just getting +1 to hit, that's been a huge nerf. It's nowhere near as survivable. And then I guess the even worse thing about that is, like, normally all these other vehicles can be run with a Tech Marine. Like that, I mean, that's how I run my super heavy tank. A Tech Marine stands next to it and gives it +1 to its ballistic skill each turn, right? That's actually weaker on the Repulsor Executioner because it already has a BS of 2 on its main cannon, so you're actually losing. And then I think the other thing to say here is, although the Eradicator's winning in terms of raw points per damage, all these shots from the Eradicators are at -4. If we go and look at like a Repulsor, half the shots from this Repulsor are coming from like Onslaught Cannons and Storm Bolters and Frag Storm Cannons that are nowhere near -4. Some of them are no AP at all. So you're talking like, you know, 10 points more to do the same amount of damage, but then when we actually come to make the save, all these shots will be at -4. I mean, in some ways that's how this super heavy tank destroyer, again, you know, some of these are almost double, 50-60% more, and again, some of the super heavy tank destroyer shots are las cannons and stuff, so they're -3, so it's not too bad, but a bunch of the shots come from heavy bolters, which are just -1. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to see what would be better than Eradicator. Somebody asked me on the Facebook group right as I was finishing this last night, what What about tactical squads? Well, I mean, the interesting thing would be if you wanted to think about tactical squads, if we go back a few slides and look at survivability, a tactical squad would have the same survivability as a Hellblaster, right? They're just a Marine and 3+ armor. So, I mean, you can pull their survivability from that. And then I guess if it was a 5-man tactical squad with all multi-meltas, you could almost pull that from this exact profile, right? Because 2 melta rifles and a multi-melta are going to be the same as 4 multi-meltas in a tactical squad. It'll be identical. So a tactical squad will be able to dish out significant damage. I mean, I guess the difference would be that you won't get the +2 from the heavy melta rifles. So maybe it's a little bit weaker than this, but I think a tactical squad with 4 multi-meltas are going to come in not far off here. They're probably going to come in maybe like 10 or 11, 12 or 13, maybe like 20% higher. But tactical squad can do the damage. They're just not going to be survivable. They're not going to rank in the survivability at all. I mean, the strength of the tactical squad, I guess, is that you can take 5 other Marines to take the wounds on, right? So when they're shooting at your multi-meltas, all those other Marines need to die first. But I mean, in doing that, you pay a lot of points to. I think you would pay 75 points. They've moved it up. I think it used to be 15 points per tactical marine. Now it's 18. So I think you pay between 75 and 90 points to have that sort of screen of. They're not useless. They can shoot their bolt rifle at 24 inches, same range as your multi-meltas, but more useless units, I guess, would be the way to say it. And then, yeah, I mean, just overall, the fact that these things are up there in survivability, in some categories they were second, third. Fair enough. I mean, if you shoot high power plasmas, you're going to kill most things pretty easily. I mean, you can see that here. You know, if you actually look at like a Redemptor against the Eradicators, the 5-man, the Eradicators, they're not. You know, they're 50% worse, I guess, but you could transhuman them to make them. So there is options. At 1 CP, it would almost bring them in level with the Redemptor. So yeah, and I mean, like, these are all balanced on high power plasma shots. These are 3 damage a shot. So you know, how many high power plasma shots do your enemies really have on the battlefield? Probably not that many. So yeah, Eradicators, are they the? I guess the question was, are they the best? Well, let's see what we thought with the summary. So yeah, this video was quite different this week, and I guess there was so much maths in it. It got really complicated, but I really wanted to figure out how to figure out point to point who provides the most value. The Eradicators perform crazily good. What's interesting is with the heavy melta rifles and a multi-melta on the same target, they outperform everything else significantly. This is purely on point to point, meaning that the reliability of the high AP of these melta guns means they generally be even stronger than most of what we compared to. Yeah, I mentioned that as we went through, and that I also threw in my 200-pound Forge World super heavy tank I've been running, as they vastly outperform it. However, all these comparisons are doing this with the assumption of using the total obliteration for all shots. You know, so that's basically you're shooting everything at the same target every turn. You're never splitting fire. In practice, this may be difficult with the heavies. But it's also much easier to give these guys sort of bonuses to hit and rerolls than it is tanks or dreadnoughts. You know, like if you have any sort of chaplain, you can have a litany that gives you, I think, +1 to hit. You can also reroll because they're core rights of battle, or you can give them chapter master rerolls. Whereas like the Leviathan dreadnought isn't core, so you can get none of that. A repulsor isn't core, so you need to bring a tech marine to just give him +1 to hit, and we just talked about how that's not even that strong in the repulsor. And then we talked about how they had the 2 defensive stratagems that I think really push them over the edge. They make them harder to wound, and also a buff to their armor against 1 damaged weapons, and they can also be in cover as well, whereas vehicles can't be in cover. And I guess the dreads and the tanks can get smoke screen. But I really think a 5-man squad of Eradicators is a great place to be. After seeing this in this detail, I now think I need a multi-part kit of the Eradicators whenever they come out to probably run 2 squads. And I think, you know, in the weekly tactics video, I always talk about how I like 400 to 500 points of shooting on a Blood Angels army. I think it saves us from being too one-dimensional and lets us pick off any big threats. You know, just enough shooting to pick off a single big threat that might otherwise cause a lot of problems if we can't get into melee combat with it. So if you think about maybe like a Redemptor Dreadnought with 2, maybe 4 or 5-man Eradicator squads around it, you're probably talking, you know, a 5-man with melter rifles. Let's look at the 4-man, sorry, with melter rifles. That's 140 points, so 2 of them is 280 points, plus the Redemptor Dreadnought to give them the bubble of plus rerolls on 1s. That'd be another 180. So you're right there in terms of like what I recommend, like 450, 500 points. And I think that gives you a lot of flexibility in that you just have enough punch there to just drop like a Titan, maybe even in one turn, or maybe not in one turn. You could at least profile them pretty badly. And then we also do have the option to reserve a squad of these for like 1 CP. They're only 6 power level, that's a typo, and that would allow you to bring them on and shoot 8 melta shots hitting on 4s if equipped with the heavy melt rifles and multi-meltas, or 6 melta shots if required, if a regular 120 point squad. So yeah, I mean, just having some of these in the battle and then having the ability to pay 1 CP and bring them in from a reserve, yeah, I mean, I thought when Eradicators came out that they were underpointed, as in like they were just too good for their points cost. In some ways, after doing this, I kind of still feel that sentiment, but at the same time, if Games Workshop were going to change it, then Codex Space Marine has been out for like, it's been out for a while. I mean, I think 9th edition actually came out in like July, so we've had 5 months of Eradicators at 40 points, so they must think it's okay now. So yeah, I guess my my verdict is go buy some Eradicators. Are they the best heavy support choice currently? For damage outpost against high strength targets, I mean, arguably yes. And then it is always usually better to overkill than to fail to kill. That's something that I've done in a few battles recently, is like I've split fire and I've failed to kill a target, and arguably you would always be better to just not split your fire and make the kill on the target. So having these guys with their total obliteration maybe even forces you to not split your fire, so that's maybe actually a good thing. Like, you know, if the enemy has 2 tanks and you split your fire and you take them both on half, whereas if you dropped one of them, would you be in a better position? Probably, because there is, like, as a Space Marine, for example, we have that profile stratagem Machine Spirit where we can operate a vehicle on full profile for 2 CP, and like I've used that on my super heavy tank. You know, like if they gets profiled, I'll just be like, no, I'm paying my 2 CP and I'm going to use it on full profile. So people can do that. Iron Hands have a way to do that for like 1 CP, I believe. Or sorry, maybe it's the Iron Hands trait. Their vehicles always count double wounds for profile. So yeah, I mean, generally I think against high strength targets, you want to buy these guys. And then I guess for survivability, we know that the Redemptor and Leviathan tend to win due to their Duty Eternal. We found that out when we looked at the Gladiator a few weeks ago. If you haven't seen that Gladiator video, it also compares as a bunch of like heavy support units, including like Sicarian tanks and Land Raiders, I believe. So if you want to see that video, I'll put a link above. And yeah, I mean, these guys came in more survivable for most categories versus like Centurions, Hellblasters, Repulsors, and a super heavy tank. And the super heavy tank costs 5 bloody CP to put it on the battlefield. So at that point, you could just, with those 5 CP, you could reserve your Redemptor and all your Eradicators and bring them in and pop your bubble aura, and you're probably still going to be stronger CP off, and the amount of damage you could do with like 8 of them all re-rolling 1s and the Redemptor all re-rolling 1s for a turn is probably pretty scary. Okay. Right, I really hope you enjoyed that. I really hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comments down below what heavy sport choices you're going to be taking. Are you running Eradicators? How are you arming them? And is there any other heavy sport that I didn't mention that you really think provides a lot of value in 9th edition? So over the next few weeks, we'll have an extra few live streams and we might be doing some other stuff. So join the Facebook group down below, and I really hope that I'll see you in the next video. By the blood are we made. Peace.